Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi tout le monde. Quoi? I'd like to call our meeting to order for October 23rd, 2023. Before proceeding to the agenda, I want to recognize that this afternoon's meeting is located in Ottawa on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Host Nation. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this land for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Services Board honors these peoples and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. As well, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and cultures. The Ottawa Police Services Board honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I want to remind everyone as we begin that we are currently broadcasting on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. Given this meeting is being held electronically, I want to caution that there is a possibility of technical difficulties. Should we receive any disruptions, I would ask that everyone remain patient as we work to fix the issue and resume the meeting as soon as possible. I also want to thank those people who the last meeting were attempting to indicate through it that I was difficult to hear. We've attempted to rectify that. I cannot see social media or even indications while I'm going along, so I count on members of the board to let me know if I'm not being heard, but hopefully we've rectified some of my own technical difficulties. Prior to this public meeting, we held our in-camera meeting. The board received and discussed the following items: a briefing on major events and demonstrations, a labor relations unit report for the third quarter 2023, a legal services report for the third quarter 2023, a complaints committee report, and 3 labor relations matters. I will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. Moving forward, that the Ottawa Police Services Board confirm the agenda of the 23rd of October 2023 meeting. Is this agenda confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you, members of the board. Moving to 3.1, the minutes number 88 of the 25th September 2023 meeting. That the Ottawa Police Services Board confirm minutes number 88 of the September 25th, 2023 meeting. Are these minutes confirmed?
Confirmed.
And moving to 3.2, that the Ottawa Police Services Board confirm minutes number 89 of the 6th October 2023 meeting. Are these minutes confirmed?
Confirmed.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move now into number 4, which is committee meetings. You have before you the draft minutes number 14 of the Policy and Governance Committee meeting, which was held on the 5th of October. And the Human Resources Committee draft minutes number 16 of the 13th of October 2023. And I'm going to ask the chairs of these committees to provide a brief verbal update on what took place at their last meetings. And we'll start, first of all, with the Policy and Governance Committee Chair, Member Doucette. Over to you for this committee report.
Great, thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, the Policy and Governance Committee met on October 5th. We discussed 3 items of business, namely a review of the board's legal services policy, focusing on updates we would like to recommend to capture instances where the board solicitor may have a potential conflict of interest vis-a-vis his primary role as city solicitor. We directed board staff to consult with the board solicitor as well as the chair to propose amendments for the committee and board's review and approval. This work is ongoing. Next, we referred the review of the Financial Accountability Procedures Manual to the Finance and Audit Committee, as we felt it was more in line with that committee's responsibilities. And finally, we discussed the creation of a new policy for the board's help to clarify information sharing within the board. The proposed policy is on the agenda today for approval. Chair, this concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Member Henschel, as Chair of Human Resources Committee, can you provide an update to us on behalf of that committee, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Human Resources Committee met on October 13th. We discussed 2 items of business, one in public and one in camera. The public item consisted of the proposed board staffing strategy, which is on the agenda today for board approval, as recommended by the committee. The committee is fully supportive of the strategy and feels it will help provide the board with the professional support and expertise it needs to effectively fulfill its statutory governance and oversight responsibilities. The second item was discussed in camera and pertained to a confidential personnel matter. Chair, this concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So members, you have these 2 items, and the motion is that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this item for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Received.
Thank you, members. Moving on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, members of the board, I'll move on to public delegations. We have 5 public delegates registered to speak today. And when I call your name, you'll be able to turn on your microphone and video. Each delegate has up to 5 minutes to address the board. And before proceeding with the first delegate, I want to provide a reminder regarding the board's rules with respect to the hearing of delegations for the benefit of the community. The board has set aside 1 hour as part of its regular meetings to hear delegations from members of the public. Advance registration is required by noon on the Friday prior to the meeting date. A written copy of the comments that will be presented must be received at the time of delegation. Delegations may speak to agenda items or any other subject matters that are within the jurisdiction of the board. These requirements are listed on the agenda on the board's website and within the board's procedure bylaw, which is available on the board's website. Delegations are an opportunity for the community to provide input to the board to help inform our decision-making and how we carry out our statutory responsibilities. They are not intended as a two-way dialogue or consultation sessions. As chair, I review delegation requests on behalf of the board to ensure that they conform to our procedure bylaw. The adherence to our bylaw helps ensure a fair, consistent approach to requests, in addition to ensuring that matters that come up before the board are ones that are properly within our mandate. And I also want to remind the public that while delegations are one way for community members to provide feedback to the board, they are certainly not the only avenue. And as I've said publicly before, I acknowledge any community members looking to speak with the board to reach out to us, and we will do our best to engage with you in a timely fashion. I also want to indicate that when a delegation is received late, that our process is to distribute those to the board members at any rate for review. Thank you very much. And I now want to proceed to the first registered public delegate, Mr. Robin Brown.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before you start my time, Madam Chair, I have a technical issue to raise. As you know, you didn't approve a part of my delegation related to the Guiding Council on Mental Health and Addiction, so I deleted that section as you requested. However, as board rules require me to read the remainder of my remarks verbatim, that section of my delegation is no longer coherent. And as this could impact the hub's reputation during my delegation, to highlight where the deleted section is, I will pause for the amount of time it would have taken me to read it. And thank you. You can now start my time.
So your time has been started, Mr. Brown. Please go ahead.
At this board's September 25th meeting, Chief Stubbs presented the OPS's 2024 budget direction and timetable, asking this board to support yet another OPS increase based on a 2.5% tax increase and a 1.5% increase in the tax base. Now, based on previous years, we expect that to be an increase of between $13 million and $15 million. At the same meeting, Chief Stubbs also asked you to approve over $193 million for the OPS's new South Facility building, which you did. Later in this meeting, we expect you'll also approve the OPS's request to take the next step in opening a police station in the Byward Market by signing a lease for almost $250,000 for a space in the Rita Center. The report Chief Stubbs will table today about the new station, which the OPS calls a Neighborhood Operations Center, says, quote, "The center will provide the OPS and partner agencies and services in the future with a dedicated location in which to strategize, prioritize, and plan proactive and reactive activities to best meet the needs of the community," unquote. But the chief's report also says, quote, "The center will not be publicly accessible at first. Public access will be considered in future years once additional agencies and service providers can be brought on board," unquote. Really? I mean, aren't they on board now? I mean, the report says the center is partly in response to an increase in calls to service following the creation of the OPS's Byward Market Neighborhood Resource Team. It says business owners and members of the community requested support to, quote, "revitalize the area post-pandemic," and that the City of Ottawa's community engagement team led discussions and efforts to drive this revitalization with assistance from the OPS. So the OPS did all that, but only foresees being able to bring community agencies on board sometime in future years. But they're asking you here now for the money, and you will give it to them as you always do. You will, despite the OPS's own data continuing to show they use force disproportionately on Black, Indigenous, and Middle Eastern Ottawa residents, and the OPS hasn't presented a plan to stop doing that, partly because you haven't asked them for one. You approved the budget increase and the $193 million for the South Facility, despite the fact that the OPS shot and killed someone in June of this year, with media reports saying the person was, quote, "in possession of an edged weapon," unquote. Now, we don't know the person's name or anything else because the OPS didn't release anything else. What we do know is that it sounds a lot like what happened to Greg Ritchie, an Indigenous man, in January 2019. So, despite the OPS presenting no plan to stop using force disproportionately on Black, Indigenous, and Middle Eastern people, and despite the OPS having shot and killed someone who, for all we know, may have been a Black, Indigenous, or Middle Eastern person having a mental health crisis, in July, City Council approved the Mental Health Crisis Response Service Pilot Project proposed by the Guiding Council on Mental Health and Addictions that the OPS created and sits on.
I suggest you move ahead, Mr. Brown, or you may be cut off.
Thank you for the advice. So you continue to block any critical input from the community, and you continue doing that despite the fact that you're currently holding consultations on the Ottawa Police Service's strategic plan that includes the goal to, quote, "collect and act on community input." At your August 25th meeting, you shared a report on the consultations that called them expansive. But the report says you only consulted with 3,600 people, and there are over 1 million people in Ottawa. Considering you're doing everything else to exclude critical voices, how expansive is that? It's clear that you really only want to hear positive input, and unless you're forced to stop doing so, you will continue enforcing rules that ensure you don't hear anything critical about this board or the Ottawa Police. And that's why a group of us are suing you, and we thank you for finally submitting your defense. It is time to start reimagining community safety by shifting money from policing to things that actually keep us all safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do any board members have questions for Mr. Brown? So seeing none, thank you again for your delegation. And I do want to remind you that my invitation to meet with you outside of the board's business meetings so that we can have a proper discussion I'd like to be able to address your full concerns pertaining to policing that are outside the board's mandate. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Chief, I wonder if at this time I could ask you to clarify the concept of the Neighborhood Operations Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to just refer to Deputy Chief Paul Burnett, who is going to talk about the center. And I just, Mr. Brown's comments, I just want to clarify one thing if it is unclear in regards to access to the proposed building. Certainly the access for the agencies that we have spoken to and have gained support to work with us will have access to the building. And those have been secured, and an impressive list of people that are willing to work with us to tackle the issues in the byward market. What we're referring to is the general public being able to open the door per se during business hours and speak to somebody at a front counter and explain a problem, report something of concern. That is something that we are delaying to future years. Just want to clarify that point. Deputy Burnett, please.
Thank you, Chief. So to clarify some points around the Neighborhood Operations Center, if you recall back in spring of 2023, the chief had tasked the Neighborhood Policing Directorate to develop what we call an evidence-based approach to identifying the problems that we have seen and identified in the market area and along the 300 block of Rideau Street. Basically, we observed an uptick in the minor criminal offenses and social disorder that was taking place in that space. Now, we know that, and we've always said that policing will not solve that problem. And basically what we've tried to do is bring together some of those social services that will help us to deal with some of the social issues that are seen in that space. We have no issues with dealing with sort of the criminal element, but we certainly want to give enough attention to those individuals who are not necessarily committing crime, and basically their plight may be the reason why they've resorted to crime. So being homeless, we've identified as not being a crime. Being a drug addict is not a crime. So we've decided to find a space within that market area where we can bring some of those social services together so that we can collaborate. Now, we do this right now in an ad hoc sort of forum. We find a space, we all come together, we bring our files together, and we have those discussions. And through a collaboration, we go out into those areas and deal with those individuals. So that, you know, the location in the market will bring, obviously, police officers to a central area to do work, to be accessible and able to deal and see and work with some of those community services that are willing to work with the police and manage some of these problems.
Thank you
So
very much.
I can also say that there are probably around 13 services that have joined with the police to collaborate. And we've seen a lot of success so far in terms of that collaboration in dealing with some of the issues. I want to point out and emphasize there are just a small percentage of those individuals in the market that are committing the crime and disorder. And our attention will be to those, but we want to give them an absolute best chance if they need some city services to be able to get out of that situation. Those individuals that are committing crime will need to be dealt with in whether it's through arrest or through law enforcement methods.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief. Moving on now to a delegation from Councillor David Hill.
Hello,
Good
can
afternoon.
you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, sir.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, board members, Chief Stubbs, and your deputies for taking the time today to hear my delegation on the topic of the Ottawa Police Services Strategic Plan and how I see the need for a modernized Ottawa Police Service in order to deal with the current threats to community safety. To start, I want to say that I'm extremely appreciative of the hard work that our brave men and women in uniform perform day in and day out. Thank you. I also want to state my appreciation for Chief Stubbs, who's been very active to me as I've been growing in my role of counselor. And just this month, Chief Stubbs, when you responded quickly to a request that I made on behalf of Rabbi Bloom and the Torah Center for more patrols in response to recent events and the fear of anti-Semitic violence in the area. In a moment where our Jewish community was at its most vulnerable, Chief Stubbs and the OPS responded with speed and grace. Thank you. Our police take personal risk in order to help keep our most vulnerable safe. For that, you have my utmost gratitude and appreciation. But despite that hard work and dedication, as a city and as a police services board, we are falling short. I hear about policing every day, And to be very clear, it's the #1 issue that I hear about. Stunt racing, aftermarket exhaust modifications, car thefts, break and enters, and traffic safety in and around our schools. I've heard loud and clear from Barrhaven residents their concerns on these issues, and frankly put, the status quo allocations of resources are not sufficient going forward. We need to see change from the operations of the Ottawa Police in terms of policy and strategy. We need clear and coherent prioritization of these issues from this board, and I recognize that I need to do my part and help to ensure the prioritization of these at the upcoming budget process. There are perpetrators who are feeling emboldened and residents that are scared. The status quo is not acceptable. On the 6th of October, I hosted 13 families who are living in fear because they believe that their ethnic community is being targeted by organized criminals due to the multiple brazen daytime house break-ins on Kilspindie Ridge that happened during a religious holiday. I visited the houses in this community and heard directly from them their fear and their desperate need for reassurance from the Ottawa Police. A question that I heard from AO and Barbara, who live on Kilspindie and whose vehicle was stolen on October 1st. If someone was breaking into our home, how long would it take for Ottawa Police to come and help us? Would they get here in time to protect us? Our communities need to have trust that in the worst case scenarios, they will not be left unsupported. Having 2 patrol cars in West Ottawa is not sufficient in the worst case. Stunt driving is an epidemic in Barrhaven, and action is required. My residents need to be reassured that the Ottawa Police have a strategy that will directly address the incessant and flagrant ignorance to basic courtesy and traffic safety. Cameras, additional enforcement, tracking vehicles of interest, private partnerships, new legislation. I want to work with the Ottawa Police Service in order to advocate effectively from the City of Ottawa to the province and the Solicitor General the need to modernize the Highway Traffic Act. I believe that it needs a comprehensive update, but specifically, we need change for the following 3 issues. Sentencing for stunt driving needs to be stronger. Sentencing for multiple offense stunt driving needs to be stronger. And the allowance for new technologies, such as sound detection radar systems that can record decibels from vehicles, needs to be incorporated into legislation to address exhaust system non-compliance. Finally, I want to address the issue of municipal police resources being employed in support to federal government demonstrations and diplomatic security operations. Ottawa is certainly unique amongst other Canadian municipalities in that we're also the seat of federal power. As a result, many of the security-related considerations that our municipal police are required to manage are due to federal, not municipal, policies and priorities. This was most clearly seen during the illegal and unacceptable occupation of the downtown core last year by protesters that were focused on federal policy. In a world of scarce resources, it's unacceptable to me as a suburban councillor who has very real security concerns in my ward that Ottawa police officers, the only resource that my residents have for protection, are reprioritized from patrolling my community to attend issues that are federal in nature. Parliament Hill has significant policing resources at its fingertips, and the Barrhaven resident whose car was stolen or who had their home broken into, they only have the Ottawa Police. In summary, I look forward to working with you as we collaboratively address the need to modernize our approach to crime in Ottawa, being proactive with the strategic deployment of police resources, ensuring our municipal budgets are up to the challenge ahead of us, and advocating for changes to the province regarding the Highway Traffic Act, and working with our federal partners to address the jurisdictional gap that the municipality is inappropriately and excessively filling. Thank you very much for your time and your attention to these important issues for me and for Barrhaven.
I see that that member Carr has a question, Councillor Hill.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was more of a comment just to respond to the delegation. First of all, I'd like to commend the councillor for getting that in under the time frame when I looked at it. And as somebody who speaks very quickly, I didn't think you could actually do it. So congratulations on that front. I just wanted to reassure you that many of these items that you're bringing forward are shared. We've discussed them specifically, and I want to let you know that you're not alone with the stunt driving. It's something I know, putting on my councillor hat briefly, that I've struggled with along Industrial Road and meetings at the Five Guys Burger nightly and racing. But many of the things that you're describing have been discussed. We've been talking about human resources strategy. Every single traffic is an issue across the board. But certainly I'll let the chief speak to some of the work that he's been doing with our federal partners. And as well, with respect to the Highway Traffic Act, one concern that we talked about a lot at the board too is also the fact that we have got police officers that are doing, paid duty with traffic, whereas in jurisdictions across Canada, they're not doing that same work. And so it takes away from the policing. But I'm sure the chief will speak to you about the district model and other things that can address it. But I just wanted to thank you for coming out today in support of those activities. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the chief has his hand raised. Chief Stubbs.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hill, for your comments. Very pointed and direct, which I know you are passionate about your ward. A number of issues, obviously, that you brought up there, and I've taken the time to meet with most councillors over the last few months. I have a few more to meet with, but there is no doubt the number one issue that they talk to me about is traffic and traffic issues, and so I've heard that loud and clear. And know that we have to be very efficient and very effective with the resources that we do have dedicated to traffic, and those resources need to grow because they can't reach all parts of our jurisdiction with the present complement. So we are looking at strategizing in the coming months for next summer, particularly as it relates to the stunt driving, which is more prevalent, of course, in the summer. Your comments related to safety in the community, the amount of officers that are in your community, and making sure that we're focused on what's important, say in your ward, as we would with the other wards. We are moving to, as we've talked about publicly, to a district model of policing, which I hope will be more responsive to the individual wards as we establish 4 districts, and a new one being the South District, where we would have a superintendent that would be allotted a number of resources, frontline traffic, neighborhood response team, and some plainclothes resources, and listen primarily to the community, which ultimately starts with the councillors of what is of importance to that particular ward. Where are the problems? Making sure that we get that formally from you, and importantly, we loop back with you of what we did or didn't do. And if you give us 10 things that are a priority and we do 7 of them, we'll tell you. And if we didn't do 3 of them, we'll tell you why not. And I think that's an important, even if the answer is negative. We've talked about this. It's going to take us a while to shift to it because it's a significant service delivery shift, but we want to start at some point in 2024 to shift to that as we ramp up for a full district model. I understand, and of course, I will say this as well, is that our resources, and again, we've talked about this publicly a number of times. The desire that I have to stabilize the service in terms of our HR, and we have a 3-year HR strategy that we've presented to the board, looking to execute in the next 3 years. That I think if we can, we will be in a significantly better place to ensure that we can serve this growing population with so many different needs. On the issue of federal funding that the federal work, that our members do, there's no doubt that we are occupied a lot downtown on Parliament Hill with some embassy work, particularly in the last month or two with the Middle East crisis, with the India file as well too. I have said that we are speaking with our partners, and I can't talk a lot about what we're doing, but we are certainly advancing discussions to try to find a solution to where we can address this demand that's on the Ottawa Police Service. And lastly, I do have on my schedule, I think later this week, I think on Thursday night, Councillor, we're meeting in Kilspindie with some community members, and look forward to seeing you and the community there to address more of your concerns. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay, so moving on, I have next Dr. Justin Pichet.
Hello. Good to go?
Hello.
Okay. All right. Thank you, members of the Ottawa Police Services Board. My name is Justin Pichet. I'm Associate Professor in the Department of Criminology at the University of Ottawa. I'm also a member of the Criminalization and Punishment Education Project. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My delegation today concerns the lease agreement for Unit 107 at 50 Rideau Street, which is item 8.10 on your agenda, as you know, which is to cover, and I quote, the first year of the lease, including operating costs of $245,000 exclusive of HST for a new neighborhood operations center in the Byward Market for the Ottawa Police Service. Before the board approves such a proposal, I would urge you to demand that the Ottawa Police Service table the full life cycle costs of this project, and maybe they'll do so later today, including but not limited to the construction costs associated with retrofitting the space, the costs of the equipment that will be on site, as well as the costs associated with the number of officers who will be working there. Without this information, the board is not, in my view, in a position to weigh the costs and benefits this initiative would have versus other possible approaches to enhancing community well-being and safety, let alone making a decision about moving ahead with leasing a space in a shopping mall to expand police presence and visibility in the Byward Market. And just to add, if this moves forward, the municipality is, saying the quiet part out loud in terms of whose interests the Ottawa Police serve and protect when they set up a cop shop in a shopping mall and what they're here to do in terms of greasing the wheels of capitalist accumulation. But anyways, I'll get to my second point now, which is whether or not alternatives to this neighborhood operations center or neighborhood gentrification center, that I think is more appropriately titled for it, have been considered where the goal of enhancing community well-being and safety is concerned. Criminological research has shown that for every dollar spent upstream on prevention, one saves $7 that would otherwise be spent on policing, courts, prisons, and victim services after victimization has occurred. And I think it's critical that the board, as well as council and the city of Ottawa as a whole, consider all options, ones that will do more than enhance the OPS's capacity to conduct street sweeps of people pushed to the margins in the name of keeping us all safe. So for instance, how many permanent and supportive housing spaces at $40,000 per year could we create for people who are currently without a home, with the life cycle costs associated with the neighborhood operations center in the Byward Market? How many community gardens valued at $12,000 per year could we build to address food insecurity with this money? How many harm reduction spaces at $14,500 per year, or spaces for 35 days of drug treatment with a year of aftercare at $19,000 could be funded with this money? How many hours of counseling could be provided to people in crisis with this money? How many intensive case management spaces could be funded for people living with severe mental health issues with this money? How many peer support workers could be hired at $52,000 per year to work alongside people needing and wanting to rebuild their lives with this money? Why do we need a new police station in the market to bring social services together, to use the words of Deputy Chief Paul Burnett, to meet the needs of those pushed to the margins in the Byward Market? Do we need more police presence in the market, a police station there to do that? I don't think so. In closing, I submit that the Ottawa Police Service has not provided enough information at this stage for the board to make a decision on item 8.10 today that will commit the city of Ottawa to a road that it arguably should not go down. I also submit that there are more cost-effective, humane, and just ways to enhance community well-being and safety. People need care, not cuffs. So I urge the board to either defer the vote on this matter today or vote no. Say nope. No Ottawa police expansion, and yes to equity and supports. Build communities, not cop shops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Professor Pichet? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, sir. All right. Moving along, the next delegation is from Councillor Stéphanie Plante. Madame Plante.
Oui, salut tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien. J'ai quelques questions, mais je vais les lire en anglais. Where are they? Okay, can you guys hear me? All good? All right.
Yes.
So I just have a couple questions about the location, which I will read verbatim. Will there be bikes? Where will they be stored? There is no parking around that area, so there's been a request from the community to have officers on bikes and on foot What is the plan for walk-in or for volunteers? Will there be coordination with any of the private security that's already in the Rideau and the Byward Market area? Will there be coordination with any of the partners like bylaw, special constables, or housing providers? Will there be statistics available? I've tried to get statistics in the past, and this seems to be sort of a cumbersome process. And last, do you have any questions for me, given that this is my area? Anyway, I also wanted to note that this is not the solution to our issues downtown that many cities are facing, but it's part of a multifaceted response. Merci beaucoup, et j'attends vos réponses et vos questions.
Okay, so I just do want to remind Councillor Plante that according to the procedure bylaw, the delegations may not direct questions to the board or the service for a response per se, just because we may not be prepared for them. The chief and Deputy Burnett did attempt to address some of these questions. However, we can ensure that some of the questions you put are shared with the service for a response after the meeting, and I don't know if any of these would be addressed at this moment. Are there any questions for Councillor Plante? Member Carr.
Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks for your delegation. I just want to confirm for your delegation, I believe the last line that you indicated, you said that you note that this is not the solution. Does that mean you don't support the establishment of the police station in your ward, knowing that it's not the solution to all these issues, or you do? If you could just clarify that last point.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. I sort of wrote this at the last minute when time was ticking. No, there's definitely a support in the community for this sort of hub, this sort of neighborhood resource center. I heard it over and over and over again when I was going door to door during the election. I heard it today. I was in the Byward Market today doing post-incident response to the shooting that happened on Thursday. So the support is definitely there, and I look forward to seeing how this all unfolds in the future. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Vice Chair Paul Cronny.
Merci, Stephanie. I have a question concerning two things. One is, could you speak to more about the walk-ins and what you would envision for walk-in purposes? Like what sort of hours, what would you expect there to be in terms of walk-in or public access is the way I see it. And secondly, the statistics. So what type of statistics are you thinking about that? For me, it's like ultimate success of the project.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would be sort of some key indicators for you?
Voulez-vous que je réponds en français ou voulez-vous que je réponds en anglais?
Si tu veux en français, ça marche, mais en anglais aussi, s'il vous plaît.
OK, la première partie, je vais répondre en français, puis ensuite, je vais répondre à la deuxième partie en anglais. Mais je sais parce qu'on a aussi un bureau, un genre de bureau sur le chemin MacArthur. Et puis, moi, j'ai eu des demandes de la communauté, des gens qui veulent être des bénévoles, ou s'il y a quelque chose comme, par exemple, leur vélo se fait piquer, ou s'ils ont des questions, s'ils peuvent juste aller en personne, poser une question, parler avec quelqu'un, et savoir, il y a des gens aussi qui sont pas nécessairement comme sur le point tech savvy, genre, qui veulent pas aller sur un site web, ils ont des nuances à leurs questions qu'un humain peut répondre. Alors, c'est pour ça que je posais la question directement, si les gens peuvent aller parler avec quelqu'un. Ça doit pas nécessairement être un policier ou une policière, mais quelqu'un qui est affilié avec le service, qui sait comment fonctionnent les différents niveaux de la bureaucratie. And for your second question, I'm sort of and again, I do apologize for not providing detail. I was sort of typing this at the last second, but I'm very pleased that OPS will be providing statistics on sort of a dashboard format about the opioid crisis, you know, how many overdoses, naloxone reversals, what's in the drug supply, et cetera, which I think will be really, really helpful in sort of tackling some of the services that we need to reach people who are vulnerable and who are street involved in this community. And that is a good thing. And then I was kind of hoping to complement those statistics with what we are actually seeing on the ground, what kind of calls we're getting, what people are worried about, or even just, you know, what's being reported in the community meetings. I know our community resource officers have attended our community association meetings. You know, I always say, you know, we can't tackle what we're not measuring. So I was just wondering if there will be some sort of public facing format looking at, and even, Councillor Hill talked earlier, even stuff like speeding. Will those things be sort of updated on a regular basis on an easily accessible website? Spoiler, I didn't really understand the form that we used previously for these things. So that's why I'm asking the question. Thank you.
Merci. I noticed that Chief Stubbs has his hand raised. Chief.
Merci, Councillor Plante, pour vos commentaires. I will respond in English for the rest of my my narrative, but I appreciate it. Look, Councillor Plante, we work a lot with her and her ward. She has a lot going on, and she's very passionate, and the desire for her to improve the security and safety of her community is not to be questioned. And I appreciate her contributions, and even during our search for a location, we've been looking for 5 or 6 months in earnest to try to find a location. And I went with her at one point through a couple of locations, and we've landed on this spot. But it's certainly, as a comment, this is not the panacea that is going to solve the issues in the market. There is no doubt. This is a multi-pronged effort, and we have to keep working on our partnerships with City Hall, with councillors, with the agencies, the vulnerable people, the business community, and of course the people that use the market. So I'm optimistic that this is an important step to have a footprint in the Byward market that we call home, that the public can call home eventually, and the agencies that we're working with directly can come and we can collaborate to make sure that we're prioritizing what we need to do. In regards to the data, we are very close to releasing the data portal. I think it's going to be about a month. We did send it as part of our beta testing and testing to the councillors, and I hope Councillor Plante, you did get that to take a look at it. It looks very good, and this is a starting line with this portal. There is a lot of different crime types that you can look at on your neighborhood, and we hope to expand that as we get comfortable with the format and we get the feedback from the public as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Madame Plante, pour votre délégation, et je peux vous rassurer que vos questions vont nous aider à améliorer les services qui seront présentés à cette nouvelle location. Merci bien et bonne journée. Moving on now, I have Mr. Sam Hirsch to delegate. Mr. Hirsch.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, first, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin peoples. I'm delegating here today, having submitted my pre-written remarks that some of you have already read, I'm sure, carefully monitored by you all, so I don't say something you think might be offensive or disagree with. Thanks to all of you here, specifically Mayor Sutcliffe and Member Carr, for submitting that bylaw. To speak to item 8.10 around the lease of 50 Rideau Street to put in place a new police station in the market. One of the things that first jumped out at me is the fact that there is no plan, at least in the immediate future, to have what was essentially the big selling point of this, to have it be a hub for multiple community service providers. Instead, it is just, as we thought, predictably solely for a police station, despite what Deputy Chief Burnett was saying. It's not true that this is going to be a hub. We don't even know if that's going to be the case in the future. So if the board is going to approve this project, which they should not, they should at the very least ensure that this will happen, because right now that doesn't seem to be the case, despite, again, what Deputy Chief Burnett was saying. Because in the report, it doesn't say that. It says it might happen, or it's going to come in the future. As we know, this was a campaign promised by Mayor Sutcliffe in 2022 and was something that many residents in Lower Town and around the Byward Market actually opposed. But the mayor or police wouldn't know this because there wasn't actually any consultation around the implementation of this project. And, knocking on doors, as Councillor Plante said, is good, but it's not enough. Wouldn't it make sense that something as big as this would require at least some consultation with residents and not just the opinions of the BIA and the Police Association? Anyone who has ever been to the Byward Market knows that it is already one of the most over-policed areas of the city. But despite that, this has not apparently led to a decrease in crime, according to the police and some business owners themselves. So I'm continuously puzzled to understand why a heavier police presence would fix that. It hasn't worked for several decades, and I just really don't know why or how that will change anything. The $250,000 lease could have instead gone to housing a new social service agency in the market, which, as we all know, is much needed. And was the case for Community Hub or whatever, what they're talking about in the report. What should have happened here at least was offering other agencies to make proposals to be able to apply to use the space. We know community health centers and food banks, for example, in our city are struggling. The Centertown Community Health Center, for example, has barely enough money to keep their trans affirming care clinic running and had to fundraise for that. And the Ottawa Food Bank doesn't have enough food to feed those in need. Yet here we are again using taxpayer money to fund an organization that has not shown us proof that their solutions actually lead to good outcomes. The police budget has increased by over 300% since amalgamation, yet year after year after year, we're being told of how crime is increasing. But nothing gets better the more money we put into policing. We know that there's better and cheaper ways of dealing with the toxic overdose crisis and housing crisis in our city. We know that preventative solutions are cheaper. So I ask at the very least that the Police Services Board today delay this decision so there can be at least some real transparent public consultation on this project, which there has not been. And so that we can now, so as another delegate noted, so that we can know the real cost behind it, like the cost, as another delegate noted, of retrofitting the space, for example. We should know the real cost before approving a project like this. What we have here today is a haphazard proposal that should go through the necessary steps to get approval, like any other decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Carr, you have a question for Mr. Hirsch.
I just wanted to clarify that we're not approving a project today. We're approving a lease. And if we were ever going to have a project, which would be, a defined scope, budget, time, that there would be consultation on what that hub would look like. But for now, it's just a lease. We're not approving a community hub. I think that was just a point of clarification. I just wanted to make clear to the delegate that it's just the lease we're approving. There's no associated project at this time.
The lease would be for the police services, though.
So please, just wait. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hirsch, for your delegation. This concludes the public delegations registered for this meeting. And before moving on in the agenda, I'd like to receive input from my board colleagues in terms of how the board would like me to handle requests that meet the board's requirements for delegations that are, however, received after the board's noon deadline on Fridays. For this meeting, there were a few such requests. They were not approved to proceed based on the procedure bylaw. They are shared with the board for information via email. And so one of the questions would be, would the board want these submissions to be listed on the next subsequent meeting for delegation if they meet our requirements, which is one possible provision. The other thing is they are circulated to you as well. And are there any suggestions, or are you happy with the status quo? So Member Carr.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, if we make a decision on this, do we need to amend the bylaw?
It's possible that we might have to. The main thing that my interest in this is that is really to ensure that all voices are heard. You do receive them, but some of them are appropriate for delegations. And when people miss the deadline, one possibility of dealing with them is just to move them to the next time. I just have to look into it to see whether or not this would require a full bylaw change.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we want to revisit the bylaw at this. I wouldn't want to do anything that amended the bylaw. So I'm wondering if it's just the simplest to ask people if they want to delegate at the next meeting, perhaps would be the easiest, because, if we get into sharing or anything, there's privacy information, that's all revisiting everything. So I would just encourage you to ask if they want to delegate at the next meeting, because unlike council committee, you don't just have to delegate to an item on the agenda when you come to the police board. You actually have the opportunity to delegate on anything that's in the mandate of the board. You know, there's no reason why they can't be bumped to the next meeting if they haven't met the deadline. That's my view. I don't think we want to get into amending the bylaw. That's all at this point.
So
Thank you.
I agree. I knew so that would have been my own preference, would be just to reach out to that person, say, unfortunately, this delegation has been received past our deadline for delegation at the current meeting, but it could be accepted for the subsequent meeting. And that, I think, is fairly straightforward. And I don't believe it will require a bylaw change. I have Member Carr and then the Vice Chair. Member Carr.
No, I'm Member Carr. You mean Member Curry.
I mean Member Curry. I apologize.
I'm just a little bit younger, but people get us confused a lot. Thank you.
Member Curry and then Vice Chair Falcroni.
Lol. Anyways, I agree with what Councillor Carr said, and other than the younger part. And then I also say that, you know, the person has the option to go back onto the next meeting, you know, but they may not be able to make that meeting. So I really appreciate you sending the material ahead of time for us to read now, you know, and the fact that we get it, they may not want to say the same thing again when we've just read it and it being a month late and on a different agenda. So I think I appreciate what's happening right now. And I think I have great faith in you to figure out what the best way forward is when you talk to or communicate with each of those delegations.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I would add is that if the matter concerns an specific agenda item, we may just want to note that on the record that, you know, for example, the lease issue is on the agenda this meeting. And if the delegation concerns that particular issue on the meeting agenda, then I think we could just note it on the record, because it wouldn't really be helpful to then come to the next meeting if it's not on the agenda, a specific issue like that, for example. So somehow just noting that on the record that we received a delegation, unfortunately not on time, but did concern a specific agenda item and was sent to all board members, so that, you know, we take that into consideration when we're having our discussions.
So thank you, Vice Chair. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take your suggestions back and I'll bring a further report for the next meeting. And thank you very much for your consideration of this. I know that our concern is to be as open as we can to all public consultation, including delegations, but also to ensure that the delegations do actually attend to issues over which we have jurisdiction. So thank you. Moving on to item 7 on our agenda regarding inquiries. Are there any inquiries? Okay. Members of the board, I'm going to run through the items of business and just see which are held and which can be carried. 8.1, the National Capital Area Crime Stopper Semi-Annual Report. We'll hold this item and return to it as there is a presentation. And we'll hold as well for 8.2 and 8.3, which are my own and the chief's verbal report. Moving on to item 8.4, the executive director's report. Is this item held or? So seeing not that, let's finish with this one now. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approved the 2024 meeting schedule. Okay. All good, that carries. Also from the Executive Director's report, item 8.5, new board policy, communications and information sharing within the board. Hold or carry?
Hold, please.
Only hold, yeah, thank you.
All right. Item 8.6, the board staffing strategy. Is this item held or carried?
Carried.
Looks carried. Okay.
Carried.
Right. Item 8.7, a request for Auditor General to conduct an overall risk assessment of the Ottawa Police Services Board. Now, this is a motion brought by Member Carr and seconded by Member Sutcliffe. Do you wish to consider this item now and have Member Carr read it in, or would the board like to hold this item?
Read.
Okay. I'm actually going to read this into the record, if that's okay, Member Carr.
Absolutely.
All right. Whereas the Ottawa Police Services Board is in the process of finalizing its strategic plan for the Ottawa Police Service, which will span the next 3 years. And whereas the board will be considering the 2024 budget in November, which includes further investments in policing, including a strategic staffing plan to help stabilize the service. And whereas the board is looking to ensure the ongoing delivery of adequate and effective policing and to better understand the greater risks facing the service. And whereas the board is also looking to identify opportunities to deliver services more effectively and efficiently, obtain the greatest value from the use of public funds, improve policies, controls, and processes, and strengthen accountability and oversight. And whereas the City of Ottawa's Auditor General is independent of the service and has access to the resources to undertake such an audit in a timely and cost-effective way. And whereas the City of Ottawa's Auditor General recently completed audits involving both the board and service in February 2022 related to the convoy, providing their office with some existing background and insights into the operations of the board and the service. Be it resolved that the board formally extend an invitation to the Auditor General to conduct an overall risk and opportunities assessment of the Ottawa Police Service and develop an independent audit work plan in order to identify and prioritize opportunities more effectively and efficiently deliver police services to the City of Ottawa. Therefore, be it further resolved that the Auditor General be invited to consider, including in the scope of their review, the following risk factors, as well as any others deemed appropriate by the Auditor General: cybersecurity and information and technology exposure, legal exposure, including environmental, regulatory, and litigation, susceptibility to fraud, other wrongdoing, or waste, complexity and significant changes in operations and service delivery, alignment of strategic business and service planning, sufficient staffing levels and organizational competence, financial exposure, materiality and impact, contractual exposure, adequacy of policies, procedures, and controls, and public and political interest. This is the motion. Are there any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, is the item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much, members of the board. Next item. Attendance at the Canadian Police Association and Canadian Association of Police Governance Shared Governance Summit, Pressures on Policing, a Shared Perspective, also from the Executive Director's report. Should this item be held or carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. RCMP Special Constable appointments and delegated authority, 1 million March for Children events. This is from the Chief's report. Do you want to hold this item or carry it?
Carried, but he's going to speak to it anyway, right?
Oh, okay. Then we'll hold it. Oh, this
It's a
item is something
ratification.
you've looked at before.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah,
Vice
it's a
Chair.
ratification. Yeah.
Thank you,
So-
Vice Chair. I'm moving along a little fast. This is just for ratification. This is something that you've looked at before, the appointments. So is this item carried?
Carried.
Okay. The lease agreement from the Chief's report, held or carried?
Held.
Thank you. Axon, item 811, Axon replacement of video oversight, held or carried?
Held.
8.12, renewal of memorandum of understanding between the Police Services Board and the City of Ottawa Transportation Services, held or carried?
Carried.
Okay, so that is that the Ottawa Police Services Board approves the continuation of the OC Transpo Special Constable Program under the same terms as the current Memorandum of Understanding until May 31st, 2024. The item is carried, members of the board.
Great.
The Safe Workplace Program. There is no presentation for this item. Is this item received or held?
It indicates there's a presentation. No?
It does indicate, but there was an update from the service saying that there would not be a presentation
Okay,
for this item.
carried.
Received. And the Workplace Investigations Office Annual Report, 8.14. Is this item received or held?
Received.
The Complaints Report, also from the Chief's Report, third quarter 2023, 8.15. Is this item received? Seeing nods.
Received.
Okay, thank you. 8.16, Performance Report, second quarter 2023. Is this item received? So that's that the Ottawa Police Services Board received this report for information. Received, thank you, members of the board. 8.7, the Legal Services Report, again for the third quarter from the board solicitor. Is the item received?
Received.
Received.
Okay. 8.18, Board Monitoring Requirement Status Report, the third quarter 2023. Is this item received or held?
Received.
Okay. Outstanding board inquiries and motions from the Executive Director report. Is this item received?
Received.
Received.
And finally, there are letters of commendation, but we'll hear those in due course. So let's now move back to my own report. Nope. The Crime Stoppers presentation, I apologize. I'm moving too fast again. I now would like to introduce Mr. Richard McMullen from Crime Stoppers, who will make a brief presentation on this item. Mr. McMullen, just looking for you.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that.
No, not at all.
We
Welcome.
appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update and submit our semi-annual report to the board, and just thank the police service, the board, for their continued collaboration and partnership. It's very nice to see. From a board governance position, we attended 3 board members and our coordinator, Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers annual conference held in London, Ontario. Basically, it's an opportunity to share best practices, learn from other programs, and see what initiatives are being worked on across the province and see how they may apply to our region as well. We had our own annual general meeting a few weeks ago. We were pleased to have Inspector Nancy Murray join us for that evening meeting. And again, her support and collaboration has been very helpful to us as a board, and definitely an asset. Move on to some of the statistics. At the end of September of this year, from January to end of September, we had almost 3,500 anonymous tips from the public, which is quite significant. September alone saw 380 tips being received, and those tips lead to faster resolution of crime and identification of suspects in the community that may help our law enforcement, help keep our community safe as a sort of point of order. We were also fortunate over the last 6 months to be out and about in the community, attending all the Police Week events across the city. We've taken part in a number of events with our RCMP partners that celebrated their 150th anniversary this past summer. attending their musical ride open house with members of the police service, our program, and other community partners to basically share and raise awareness about anonymous crime reporting with the community. Took place across the city in several community events hosted by city councillors, including Canada, where Councillor Hubley had us to a councillor's event. We've been in the Lower Town area, Alta Vista, River Ward, and again, just being out in the community and sharing information and awareness about our anonymous tip program, how it works for the members of the community, and what the program does is always well received, and we appreciated doing that. On a fundraising initiative, we held our annual golf tournament, raised just over $25,000, which was a milestone for us in the history of the program. Once again, we went back to Pineview Golf and Country Club, and it was a great day, attended by a large number, almost our record. We were just shy of 144 golfers that contributed to raising funds and that community support. We had our, again, some of the members of the police service come out and help us kick off and launch the event. And with our community resource officers, that was quite impressive, and again, well attended with community members. The financial position of our program continues to be strong. You know, these golf events and other fundraising initiatives continue to keep us in a healthy financial position so we can continue to operate and continue to offer cash rewards for anonymous tips. So in essence, that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments for us. We'd be happy to address.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMullen, for your report. Are there questions or comments for Mr. McMullen? Chief Stubbs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say to Mr. McMullen, you know, of course, we value the Crime Stoppers a great deal, and thank you for all your work. They do such a great job, and disappointed I missed that golf tournament that you had, and I didn't get to it. Maybe next year, but I think I might have been busy. But we appreciate the partnership, and thank you very much to you and your team.
Thank you. We'll take that information back to them. We appreciate that. It's a great collaboration, and it works so well. It's nice to have that support.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much again, Mr. McMullen. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you very much, members of the board. I will now proceed with my verbal report. First of all, with respect to the use of delegated authority. At the July regular meeting, the Vice Chair and I were delegated authority to approve special constable appointments in relation to any demonstrations or major events that occurred between July 24 and September 30th, as well as any memorandums of understanding required to secure resources from other police services. We noted that the use of this delegated authority would be reported out at our next regular meeting. On behalf of the board, the Vice Chair and I jointly approved a memorandum of understanding with the York Regional Police Service, who provided assistance to the OPS in relation to a dignitary visit in September. With respect to the draft strategic plan, notre deuxième sondage sur le plan stratégique a terminé le 16 octobre. J'aimerais remercier toutes les personnes qui ont pris le temps de répondre au sondage. Our second public survey was related to the board's strategic plan, closed on October 16th, and I want to thank everyone who took the time to complete it. I'm also continuing to meet with stakeholders to gather further input. A small working group will be meeting in the coming weeks to go through the community feedback gathered on the draft strategic plan and to determine how best to incorporate it. Les réunions avec les membres du communauté vont continuer pour pour essayer de changer et améliorer le plan stratégique. The final plan is expected to come forward at the board's November 27 meeting for approval. With respect to the Middle East conflict, I do want to acknowledge the efforts being made by the service to engage with our local Israeli and Palestinian communities, to hear, understand, and address their concerns, as well as ensure their safety. The board has received positive feedback around your efforts and messaging. This is a very difficult time for Palestinians and Israelis, for Jews and Muslims. The service has a responsibility to ensure the safety of all community members and to address any local instances of hate, and your efforts in this regard have been commendable. This concludes my verbal report. I'll take any questions or comments that people might have, but ask that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive my report for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to the Chief's verbal report. Chief Stubbs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about retired Sergeant Robin Easy. As many of you know, he passed away last week, surrounded by his family and loved ones. While I never had the opportunity to meet him, everything I have heard about him is an example of selfless service to others. Sergeant Easy was shot in 1984 at the Bayshore Shopping Center after interrupting an armed robbery. Robin was left blind with severe mobility and health issues. His injuries and the events of that day would have broken many, but Robin and his family persevered and stood as a symbol of strength and a driving force for change. He passed away at the age of 70. By coincidence, a week before he passed, I was briefed on the program that was launched in 1988 by him and other members who had experienced a shooting event in their careers. Robin's Blue Circle is one of the longest standing police peer support programs that has helped so many of our members and inspired similar programs at police services across the country and around the world. That's a true legacy and testament to the type of man that he was, and kind of captures who he was as a person, that he took a life-changing event and turned it into something positive that would help others. He remained a part of our service and advocated for improvements in the field of brain injuries and for police members involved in traumatic events. This led to another important initiative like the Robin Easy Center for Cognitive Rehabilitation at the Ottawa Hospital. Robin loved the OPS and we loved him back. He was supported over the years by so many active and retired members, and I want to thank them all for supporting him. He will be remembered as someone who faced adversity and turned it into something that would forever change how we support each other as police professionals. His story will forever be remembered as one of courage and a true hero. We will honor him at his funeral later this week. The conflict in the Middle East is tragic. Despite the events being so far away, the effects of the war resonate to so many in our community. The Ottawa Police Service has reached out to numerous community leaders in an effort to coordinate our resources to keep everyone safe. This is our goal, keeping all the people in our community safe. Thousands of people have demonstrated in Ottawa over the last 2 weeks in response to this conflict in the Middle East. At times, the number of people marching or demonstrating have been a challenge to manage for police, but I would like to thank those who have peacefully demonstrated in Ottawa. We expect that assemblies will continue and police will attend these events to protect the safety and security of our communities. In our reach out to impacted communities, we want to make sure they understand that they are fully supported, and we want to learn about any incidents of hate that may be occurring so we can address it. Since the start of the conflict in the Middle East, we have received 17 hate-motivated reports. We are responding to these events as they are received. We continue to encourage anyone who witnesses or experiences such incidents to report them to police. We will prosecute those who commit hate crimes to the full extent of the law. I was really encouraged by the mayor's meeting with a number of religious leaders and their commitment in a joint letter to work together to ensure Ottawa remains safe and peaceful and to denounce all forms of hatred and discrimination. This conflict is going to stretch over a number of weeks and months. As a community, let's work together to ensure it's a peaceful time in Ottawa. Our homicide unit continues to work hard to identify those responsible for shooting deaths in our city. Last week, they made arrests in 2 major incidents, one in the death of 19-year-old Brendan Makuma in Orleans, and another in the death of 47-year-old Michael Quattrochi in Carleton. To date, in 2023, we have had 12 occurrences of 13 homicides, with 10 of those fully resolved. That's a credit to the professionalism and diligence of our small homicide team. They are truly motivated in wanting to provide resolution and closure for the families impacted. We are still fully committed to resolving the 2 unsolved homicides. One involved the shooting death of a 26-year-old, Granite Ahmedi, in the 400 block of Farmers Way in mid-August, and the other involves our continuing investigation of the shooting at a wedding in September that saw 6 injured and 2 killed. We are asking the public to come forward and provide any information they may have about these 2 incidents. This can be done, this can include dash cam or doorbell video from a nearby business, or eyewitness testimony. We know that this has deeply impacted the community, and we will continue to work with them to resolve this matter. Earlier, we heard a delegation from Councillor Hill that outlined his concerns in his ward on the topic of stunt driving. In my meetings with city councillors across the city, traffic concerns have been raised in most of my discussions with them. We know this is a priority for citizens in Ottawa. Over the course of October, our officers have been out in key locations all across the city, stopping and impounding those stunt drivers who make our roads unsafe. On October 10th, they were out in Orleans, Canada, and Rideau Street. During this time, they stopped someone on Bank Street going 118 in a 60-kilometer zone. On October 12th, they stopped a driver after he was clocked going 98 kilometers in a 50 near Walkley Road. On the same day in Ottawa South, they charged a street racer doing 108 kilometers in a residential neighborhood. Over the weekend of October 14th, our team issued over 100 tickets for speeding and stunt driving, as well conducted several ride checkpoints. They selected their locations based on reports we received from the public, so I would encourage you to file a report online at any time you see dangerous driving. We take that information to help us identify problem areas in our city and determine where we can best leverage our limited resources. And I do want to thank our traffic services team for their citywide efforts to help reduce the number of dangerous drivers on the road. I am pleased to let you know that in the coming month, we will be launching a new community safety data portal. We are conducting our final testing that has included the city councillors across the city. The community safety data portal will provide an at-a-glance snapshot about crime and social disorder, right down to a neighborhood level. It will include things like thefts, shootings, robberies, hate crimes, and sexual violations, and will be updated within about 24 hours of each reported incident. It will also include a new crime map that residents can zoom in to see what's going on in their neighborhood. This is part of our commitment to keep residents informed about what's going on in their community. The goal is to enhance crime prevention for residents and build trust and transparency with our service. I want to thank our team at OPS for their incredible work getting this project completed in less than a year. In 2019, we were approached by the Vancouver Police Service for an investigation into a police officer from another police agency, not the OPS, who had been charged with exposing himself to school children. Detective Paquette of the OPS was assigned and was tasked with identifying, locating, and interviewing 10 victims in Ottawa to support the prosecution of the officer. In many cases, Detective Paquette only had a photo to go on and not much more information beyond that. She worked hand in hand with our embedded crown, Suzanne Schreck, who navigated multiple challenges during the trial. Suzanne's hard work and arguments supported the denial of bail for the officer, and in July, he was found guilty and sentenced to 18 months in jail. He will also be listed on the sex offender registry. Both of these women were tireless champions of those who had been impacted, and I want to thank them for their drive and professionalism. We received countless emails of thanks towards both of these women for going above and beyond in service to the victims. I want to end my verbal by telling you about an incident that occurred earlier this month. We received an email from a grateful mother after she called 911 for help when her 4-year-old daughter went into cardiac arrest. As she started CPR with the help from our communications center agent, she managed to regain a pulse, but by the time the first responders arrived, she had lost it again. When Constable Jose Provencal arrived on the scene, she joined paramedics to restart CPR, regaining the child's pulse in time for them to transport her to CHEO. I'd like to read a letter we received from the mother. I would like to express my gratitude to the police officers who responded to our medical emergency when my daughter went into cardiac arrest at home. The officers were compassionate, helpful, and reassuring. I could have not asked for a better team to have responded to the emergency. An extra special thank you to the officer who drove me to the hospital and gave me a hug when she saw me in the hallway at CHEO. I would also like them to know that my daughter survived and is recovering very well. I'll leave it at that. If there's any questions, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Chief. Member Curry.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed that, reading that in our report, that letter in. Chief, so I didn't want to hold up 8.14 or 8.15 just to make comments. So I just want to make a couple comments to you that I really enjoyed reading both of those reports, the Workplace Investigations Office report and the complaints report, as I liked how there was sort of a list of what the issue was, what was done, what was the follow-up, and actually what the learning was. And I found it really interesting to read, and also I think reassuring that, you know, the complaints and incidents are followed up, and that they are tracked, and that there is this data, and that in fact changes are made. So I just wanted to say that to the people that wrote both those reports. I enjoyed them, and I thought the information in them was interesting. So I just want to say that. I also wanted to say thank you very much for a lot of the for their message today about what's happening in the Middle East, and a lot of the language in any police communications on that. I have heard from members of our community and from our elected officials that they are very pleased with the types of messaging that the police are sending out. So I wanted to give you that feedback. And then I also wanted to say that I have been contacted by members of our faith communities as well. And they are very concerned. They are thankful of the police involvement and protection. So, however, they have a question, and the question is, when they have been at different events, their perception is that there are messages that could be hateful or involve hate, but they're not sure what the trigger is, what the line is that needs to be crossed for someone to be arrested for a hate crime. So sometimes they're hearing something at an event where someone is speaking, saying things to the crowd and potentially inciting them to violence, and potentially in a different language that police may not know, or be making references that are symbolic or metaphorical that could be, if properly understood or taken in one particular way, could be seen as hateful messages. So the question really is, what does it take for an offense or someone to do something that then they would be arrested for a hate crime?
Thank you, Member Curry, for your comments. And it is hard to, to definitively say it's this, because every situation is different in the context they're in. And really, we would encourage people, if they're unsure, to contact us, and then we can assess it and give them that feedback. I think it is good. But I know I am going to pass it off to Deputy Chief Ferguson and let her speak a little bit more on that.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your question, Member Curry. I think it's fair to say the approach that OPS takes as we attend these demonstrations, there's a number of sort of phases we go through. The first is that prior to these, our PLT officers will meet with organizers, and they will let them know about the limits of when a protest goes from free speech to promoting hatred. And they, will talk about some of the signs and symbols that are and are not allowed. Our frontline members are provided with actual images and examples of some of what are recognized hate symbols within, if we're speaking about the Middle East conflict right now, some of the ones that are known hate symbols. And so they will be familiar with those. And if they come across any of those in the demonstrations or out in the community, then that is an arrestable offense. And the offense of promoting hatred can be laid in those cases. Sometimes because of the size of the crowd and the number of officers we have, you might see them not wading into a crowd because it might be dangerous in the moment, but they will be capturing those images and taking that evidence and potentially laying charges at a later stage. There are 3 offenses under the criminal code that pertain to hate: public incitement of hatred, willful promotion of hatred, and advocating genocide. These are known as consent offenses, so it means charges are only laid in these cases when they're done in consultation with the Crown Attorney. But I think it's really important, as the Chief mentioned, that if there are any incidents, that contact the police and allow us to investigate it to its fullest and determine if there are charges that apply. This is a, unfortunately, up and coming, if you will, area of criminal investigations. And I think across the country, police services are learning from each other in terms of some of the offenses that have been laid, the charges that have been laid, and the types of things that we are seeing in these communities. And we absolutely want to hear from people if they are concerned. As for the issue of language, in demonstrations, we do our best to make sure that we have officers who are able to understand what's going on. But if we don't, generally we will have translation services or the ability to gather some information. Often we'll be, approached in a crowd, and somebody who has heard that communication will be able to provide us with some information, and we can report it or investigate it from there. I hope that helps.
That's very, very helpful. I mean, I guess someone could video some of the speech too, if it were in a different language, and then you could find out later on, and then an arrest could be made. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. I will pass that information on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions with respect to the Chief's report? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to item 8.5, new board policy, communications and information sharing within the board from the executive director's report. This item was held. Member Curry.
Okay, so I had questions. I also wanted to say the page numbers on the report are very helpful. I'm full of compliments today, but when I can flip to where I know I had the question, is great instead of scrolling down my screen. Okay, so the Toronto version was missing a few lines that we have added, right? So nobody else had anything, which was fascinating, but the Toronto version had, the Toronto Force has something, but they didn't have the lines we wanted. But I still have questions about at the earliest opportunity. This came about because of what happened during the convoy, right? And so for the chair to be communicating with the rest of the board, or this one applies to all members. I read it, I understand this, but at the earliest opportunity, what sounds more like a board meeting or something like that. What about if it has to be even more, it has to be quicker than that? So I wanted to just ask, is it Krista or someone?
So can you hear me if I speak through Gail's mic? Okay, so it does specify that even at the earliest opportunity, if it's not of an urgent nature, it can be at the following board meeting in the form of either a report or a briefing. If it is of something of an urgent nature, their recommendation is to consult with the chair on the appropriate avenue. So that could be a special meeting, depending on the type of information that was received. It could be a suggestion that, no, it may not be that urgent that I can't wait till our next meeting, depending on the timing, right? Because our meeting could be in a week, for example. So there's different avenues. We just need to make sure that we're following our appropriate guidelines and not conducting board business over email, for example. But the chair could consult with the member to determine the most appropriate avenue if it's urgent.
Okay. All right. I mean, the other question I have is maybe just a legal one on page 55, where it says a board member, which could be the chair, obviously, will share. The difference between will, must, may, those words, in terms of our, I don't know if we've got a legal comment, but will, does that mean must, has to?
I think shall is the word that means must. And I'm comfortable with shall, actually, if the board is.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was that one. I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure shall is the obligatory one from, I noticed it's possible, and it's possible that he can help me. Vice Chair Paul Crowley.
Yeah, shall is appropriate in this circumstance as well. I think will also gives a significance that it's obligation of the chair to do so. But yeah, shall is used more in kind of legislation.
Okay, so if we could change that to shall, that would be, I would like that. I don't know if it's not a major amendment or anything to the report, but if shall can be swapped. And then the other thing, the chair, so scrolling down that page in item 3, the chair will consult with the vice chair or the executive director to determine how best to provide the information to the full board. So the chair is going to do that, and a board member shall, and the board member includes the chair because the chair is a member of the board. So we're covered.
Yes, from my perspective. He also said that when it says the board, the chair will, I'm happy to have that will also change to shall.
Okay, thank you. That would be great. And then I think we are in full compliance with what would work best. Thanks.
Vice Chair Falcrani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The directions were carried out exactly that we requested the executive director to do, sort of go in principle for Toronto.
So, excuse me, Vice Chair, I'm having some difficulty hearing you.
Sorry, I hope this is better. I'll come closer. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I just wanted to put out the suggestion. Right now, it's really limited to information that we receive from the command team, from the chief of police. But what if we receive information from another source? Do we want to include that type of information also, that we have an obligation to share that immediately as well? So that was a question I had, because right, if you read it, the introduction is really information received from the command team, the police chief, in the course of the work. But sometimes, you may be meeting with someone that gives you some information, Madam Chair, or a board member that would be relevant to share or important to share. I don't know if we want to put that as an obligation under the policy or not. So I just wanted to bring that forward.
I hear the question. I'm going to hope that Member Henschel is going to illuminate us a little bit.
Yeah, I think that you've got to be a little bit careful there, because you can hear all sorts of information, but what's the veracity of it, or is it reliable, and those kind of things. So I think that there has to be some leeway or some interpretation in this, or some ability for whichever member receives something to say, okay, that this is something of consequence, and it seems like there's some level of reliability to it, and the other board members should know this, right? Because it's easy enough to hear things that could just be, people chatting, or people's viewpoints or whatever else. And I think we got to be careful there with how we take that versus you get information from the command team.
So I hear this. I'm not sure it necessarily brings enough clarity to the discussion. I think somehow the language that's needed is language that makes it more likely for sharing than less likely. In other words, that certainly from my perspective, I think is safest. That when uncertain whether or not something might be impactful, the best idea is to share. So I think maybe what we'll do is look at that and building that into it, if that makes sense to you. The idea that the information sharing should not leave too much judgment up to a person, but rather be more obligatory than anything else. Does that make sense to people?
I think it makes sense. I just think that we don't want to get into a situation where, you start passing on rumors or, it becomes gossip. Again, I'm not suggesting that it would, but I think that if you write something as you hear anything, it's an obligation, and you make it it's an obligation without any sort of assessment or reasonableness, then you're going to wind up in a situation, I think, where you potentially have information being shared that is not reliable or whatever else, and starts people spinning up on something which is just not going to be helpful. So I at some point or other, I think we've got to rely on good judgment of board members as well. So I don't think it's helpful to have an obligation of, you hear something, you're obliged to pass it on.
Yeah. Member Curry, can you help with this?
I don't know. I was just going to say, if you were going to look at that language, I mean, does it even include, if we were to get have a chair was to get information from a legal source, like one of our lawyers? It says the board, executive commander, service chief, like who else could, in terms of what Peter's member Herschel saying, it that is it another credible source that in light of the rest of the sentence is pertinent to the board's consideration of matters before it. So it wouldn't be rumor and innuendo. It would be about a specific issue in front of us. But I mean, I think you may need some time to go away and think about it, but I'm just saying the language in front of us here doesn't even include the possibility if we had from one of our lawyers.
Mm-hmm. No, agreed. Vice Chair Pakrani.
Yeah, I think we could go back and revisit and add language to the effect that you say, look, board members will assess and use good judgment when they receive information on whether to share it with other board members. I think that type of language would help. But I think, with respect to the command team and the police chief, I think the way it's written is well written. Because I think there is a greater onus when we already have that reliability, good judgment, that we know when the information is coming from that source and it's a relevant source for our deliberations. But I think it's other sources of information that we receive that board members should use, assess and use good judgment on whether or not to share at that particular time. Right. So we could go back.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're going back with this one. So we'll say this item is not going to be carried this time through, but we'll look at this again.
Would you like
So
it
we'll refer this back to policy and governance for another look. Moving on to the next held item on our agenda, which is 8.10, the lease agreement for Unit 107 55 Rideau Street. 50 Rideau. Oh, it's 50 Rideau? Okay, I apologize. So 50 Rideau. There were questions with respect to this item, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have no issues with the lease and the procurement of the lease. I read the materials and it looks like the appropriate due diligence and the procurement and the lease rate is all reasonable. What I'd like to suggest, however, Madam Chair, is maybe the service could come back at the December meeting and provide additional information to the board. In particular, I think it would be helpful for the board to understand the plan for public access. This is the ultimate goal, but it would be helpful to know when the OPS is considering opening it up for public access. The other thing that would be important may be that they could, that the chief and the service could provide is the factors of success, because at the beginning we'll have to establish some baseline indicators. So it was going back to Councillor Plante's sort of key statistics. But I just want to drill it down further into the key statistics of what would make this particular neighborhood center successful. What would be that success 5 years from now, how would we say that, yes, we made a difference, we made a positive improvement to the neighborhood? So it would be helpful to see some indicators on that, and also come back with other costing, because that was mentioned by some delegations. So what is going to be the overall costing, not just the lease cost, and more information on the hub partners and when they'll be fully on board. So if I think I have no issues with the lease, but I think we need more information on other aspects, and maybe the service can come back in the December meeting to provide that information.
Thank you. So speaking in favor, but with seeking for more information. Thank you, Vice Chair. Member Carr.
Thanks. And I guess this kind of follows Vice Chair Fakurani's question. My understanding is, I wanted to confirm that this lease agreement right now, the intention is to absorb it in existing authorities. And once we get the lease, and then I imagine it would become any expansion or anything to do with hubbing up with community partners, access, any of that, then we would then launch a process that it would become like a project. There would be a project charter where we would identify the additional funding. So for right now, we're just signing the lease. You are coming back to us, are you not? Like this is just from my point of view, a financial transaction. I just wanted to know if this was in the existing budget authorities right now. You're not coming back to council with new money for next year, other than the 2.5% budget directions. And from then it would turn, would it not, into a project where we would look at who the partners are, what are the costs, what are the expansions? If we could get that confirmed, I think that would help answer some of the questions that Councillor Plante posed as well about some of those usages, if we can just address that.
So a couple of concerns, Chief. Who would you like to take this?
I think Deputy Bell can address some of the financial and lease concerns or questions. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So this is actually going to be pulled from existing funds within our facilities budget. So there's no new money being asked in year or in 2024. We'll have to consider what it looks like 2025 moving beyond. But for now, the lease and any sort of upfit costs are going to be absorbed into current budget basis.
Okay, so yeah, so it's just the lease within existing authorities. We're being asked to the authority for the lease, and anything else will become a new project, right? Like we'll look at all the consultation, what it could look like. That's a separate process than that. Then correct? Yes.
So I'd turn that over to Deputy Burnett, because I think you're talking about when you have the building, what are you going to do with the operations of it? How are you going to figure out what that's going to look like? Is that right?
So it seems to me that all the delegations today are asking questions about that, not that next phase. They're not asking questions about what we're being asked to do today, which is sign the lease, which is a financial transaction. So I think it's just important to speak about that next phase. I think is important.
Deputy Burnett.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, this goes to what we're trying to accomplish, right? We are trying to bring all of these services together, and really, we would like to be on the background while these services sort of manage some of the issues that we're seeing in the community. We do want to play a pivotal role, but we do not need to be the front and center. And I think the community wants us in that space, but doesn't need us dealing with some of those issues. So I think, the idea here is let's get the space, let's bring all the sort of partners together, and hopefully, and hope is not a strategy, but this will be the end result, is that with all of those services together, we can attack some of the issues that we see in the marketplace. We'll continue to do our enforcement and take care of community safety and well-being, but we would like to see some of these city partners take on a little bit more of a proactive role in managing some of the social issues that we see with some of the individuals down there.
If I could just follow, it there is a request to have a little bit more of an idea for what that might look like, if that's possible, at the December meeting. Is that possible to have just a, is it fair to say, Vice Chair, a bit of a vision for how that would look? High level at this stage, understanding that there's interest in the community about what this could look like. High level.
High level, Madam Chair, but a bit drilled down too, right? Like when are we talking about public access, for example? Like I know, are we're looking in what month are we looking at public access, onboarding other partners, etc. Like, so yes, high level, but with some drill down, please.
So high level with a bit of a timeline. Does that sound?
Sure.
Yeah, because they're like retrofitting and things like that. So that's something that we would like to hear as early as December, please.
Yeah, we can work on that. And I think, you know, the chief's vision around district policing will play a role there, but certainly we will we'll work on that and bring that back to you.
Great, thank you so much. With respect to this item, so this is I'll read. Okay, I apologize, Member Carr, I didn't see your hand against the background.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that what we bring back, we ensure that we're not making any decisions without consultation with the community on any aspects, right? Like maybe it's better to bring back like a high level consultation plan and next steps for projects. Like I don't really want to be setting any success factors when we haven't done any of that. So maybe it's just a timeline and a consultation plan might be better. I just want to be clear on what we're bringing back. That's all. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I agree. I don't want to sort of, we need some detail. It would be good to have a timeline from my perspective for some of these things. I think that the board accepts that there needs to be some further consultation on this, but the details that I heard the Vice Chair express wanting were things like when it might be open to the public, but the other questions include when might the public be consulted. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that the service has enough detail to be able to proceed with providing us with some information.
Yeah, Madam Chair, no, certainly hear your commentary here, and that won't be a problem. We can provide you with, and I appreciate the December deadline given the December meeting, given the budget that we'll be going through in the next month. So that's good timing for us.
Okay. All good. Any other questions or concerns, members of the board? So I'm going to read the motion into the record that the Ottawa Police Services Board approve a new lease agreement with CF Rideau for a new neighborhood operations center for approximately 2,629 square feet of space located at 50 Rideau Street, Unit 107 for a period of 5 years, commencing February 15, 2024. The cost of consideration for the first year of the lease, including operating costs, is $245,944.95 exclusive of HST. Members of the board, is the item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to item 811, Axon, the replacement of video oversight. Again, from the chief's report. There were questions on this item. Member Doucette.
Great, thank you, Chair. I've got some questions and observations on this one. First off, from the costing breakdown, it'd be really helpful to look at the breakdown from the perspective of services, product, and internal costing, and also having that costing matrixed over the 5-year duration of the implementation. As well, it'd be useful to have a high-level project plan and potentially project charter for the DEMS system. And I'd like to know from the video oversight to Axon, what period of time will the two systems coexist? Because I'm assuming that today we're still paying maintenance fees on video oversight. And then as we're transitioning to Axon, how long do those two systems coexist, and how do we handle information sharing from one system to the other, or will that happen? As well, for a project that's going to last 5 years, I'd like to see a risk register on risks that are inherent to that project. It doesn't necessarily give me confidence when I see that the work is expected to occur in the fourth quarter of this year, the first half of next year. It doesn't sound very solid from my perspective. As well, from the OPS portion of the work, over $2.5 million over 5 years, I'd like to see how that rolls out. And in that 5-year period, which is quite a large period or a long period for technology implementation, when does Axon go live, and what does that look like? What do those 5 years look like? Maybe the last comment on preferred pricing from the Ontario government that they negotiated. I'd like to understand, does that preferred pricing just include the software? Does it include hardware? Does it include services? And how does that preferred pricing compare to other policing jurisdictions in Canada who have already implemented this system? So those are my questions and comments on DEMS. Potentially, last comment. I'm assuming this will be a cloud implementation. I'm assuming we've done a third-party risk assessment of storing information of this nature in the cloud. And I'd be curious if the system or the information will be stored in Canada or abroad. So I know that's a mouthful of comments, but that's what I saw when I read it. So thank you for that.
Chief, who would you like to address these items?
Deputy Bell has a smile on his face. I'll pass it over to him.
He has a smile on his face because I think I got most of it, but Member Henschel, any parts that I missed, please let me know. So I'll start at the last first. It is a cloud implementation. There has been a security assessment done. It is information that is hosted through Axon in Canada. So that's all part of the assessment that we've created. What I can tell you is that this is a completely chartered, assessed out project that we're looking to implement, involving risk registry and all the basic project management principles in order to bring this online. It isn't going to take 5 years to implement. What we have in front of you is licensing costing over a 5-year period. And that's what you're seeing in front of you. There is a plan, and I'll get you exact dates, and a Gantt chart in terms of how it's going to proceed to actually onboard the new camera and video oversight technologies. It will be happening. It will be commencing in the fourth quarter of this year and running through early next year as we transition the 18 video rooms from the current system to Axon. What I can tell you is the current system is beyond end of life. We, in a very archaic manner, provide video information to the Crown Attorney, and we'll continue to do that until this is brought online. But this system is actually designed for us to have a seamless transition of videos and any video or audio information to the Crown Attorney's office as part of any court charging package. Through evidence.com or through the Axon system that both parties will share. So we will continue to use the system we have, but it will be a very quick transition to the new system once we have it on board. In terms of pricing, what I can tell you is that there is preferred pricing, as you've seen, that we're getting in Ontario through the Ministry of the Attorney General, who's negotiated with Axon, and that's the pricing that's shared by other police agencies who actually have brought Axon on board. One of the things I will say about this project is we're not first in this. There are many different policing services that utilize this technology and utilize these services, and we're learning from them. We're gathering all the information we can to make sure that we can identify any missteps that they might have had or areas that they didn't focus on enough. So I think I got all of your questions, but I may have missed a couple. So please let me know if I did.
No, I think, thank you very much for that. I think you covered everything that I was looking for. And I'll reach out to you to maybe get a look at the project plans, the project chart, or those sorts of things, just out of interest.
Absolutely, for sure. I look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Are there any other questions? So I'll read this into the record, that the Ottawa Police Services Board delegate authority to the Chief of Police for the purchase of equipment, digital evidence information management system licenses, and professional services required to replace the end-of-life video oversight, interview recording, and management system for the amount of $2,726,190.17 before applicable taxes. Is the item carried?
Carried.
Okay, thank you, members of the board. Moving on now to what I believe is our final item, which is item A20, letters of commendation from the chief's report. Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great way to end the meeting. There was a whole bunch of different commendations and pats on the back for our members, which we really appreciate that from the public. And it's up to Deputy Burnett to choose the ones that will get relayed tonight. Paul.
Thank you, Chief. And I do believe, Councillor Curry, you're familiar with this. Basically, this was a commendation received from a member of the public towards Constable Wayne Clayton. And it reads as this: I've come to consider Constable Wayne Clayton a real ally and someone who gives great emotional support in my neighborhood. I have been physically assaulted twice, with both suspects located and arrested. Constable Clayton helped myself and my roommate in all these cases, giving us a lot of valuable knowledge and support. In another incident, I was robbed of my purse, wallet, cell phone, leaving me destitute. Constable Clayton came by with food, bank groceries, and a new cell phone, which I desperately needed to keep doctor's appointment and my recovery in a 12-step program. When I was first diagnosed with my mental challenges, I wasn't on the proper medication, and it was noticeable that I wasn't well. Constable Clayton supported my efforts to advocate for myself to get medication and help that I so desperately needed. Today, mentally, I'm so much better. Constable Clayton and his units do so much more for our area than arrest criminals. They care about the residents, try to assist them in, if possible, in any way they can. Constable Clayton is even well known on 2 Facebook sites concerning our area. People sent him camera footage, and there's so much praise for him and his unit. I wish all Ottawa communities had officers like Constable Clayton and his team. In another commendation, again for Sergeant Stephen Plummer from a member of the public. I witnessed a person fall from their balcony and rendered aid to them until paramedics police arrived. I was extremely upset and in shock over what I had seen. Sergeant Stephen Plummer was the senior officer on the scene. He contacted the victim support unit of Ottawa Police Service and arranged for someone to come and see me that evening. He stayed with us while we spoke. Sergeant Plummer is a tremendous asset to the OPS. He is a leader and dedicated to his job. His communication skills, demeanor, and compassion helped me recover from trauma of the incident. He is well deserving of recognition for his actions. And then the last one I'd like to read is, again, from a member of the public, Constable Darren Trudell. I was at a gas station where a police officer was also filling up her vehicle. A few young children were out of school and commenting on her police car and how it was so cool. She didn't even hesitate and asked if they wanted to check it out. They were so excited. She pulled over to the side of the gas station, opened both doors and let them explore. It was an amazing example she was setting to have police engage with our youth. Just 3 examples of some of the great works that our members are doing out there.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Member Carr.
Thank you very much for those. And I know we always enjoy hearing them. I know I'm not supposed to really have my counselor hat on and I'm supposed to be a board member, but I'd like to specifically speak about Constable Clayton. It was mentioned in the commendation about his compassion and also the unique relationship that he has with the community, and that he was active in 2 Facebook groups I actually believe it's 4 Facebook groups. I've since exited all of the Facebook groups. I was getting way too many tags, but Constable Clayton has worked in my neighborhood for some time, along with Constable Hebert. They, in a time when things were really difficult, I think, for the police and across Ottawa, they developed a huge social media following in my community. They set up accounts as constables, not their personal accounts, and they regularly updated the community about what was going on. They allow you to communicate with them via Facebook. They leave posts on what's going on, and they are lauded throughout the community on all Facebook groups for the amazing bonds that they have formed in this community. And this has been the last few years when things were very tough, and you know, with the perception of police and things that were going on in the community. And I never saw that in my community because of these relationships that they built with all members of the community. And you're hearing the compassion in that email from a resident who admits the struggles that resident has had, and you see that every day. And I noticed that in the commendations, and I just really wanted to speak about the experience in my community. And I think the reason that I get such positive feedback in my community about policing, you know, it is in large part because of the relationships that they've established and the efforts that they have made and the channels that they do so. And thanks for letting me add on to that.
Chief.
Thank you, Member Carr, for I met with you last week as a counselor in your ward, and you mentioned him as well too, and lauded him at that point too. So love those comments and love the passion and emotion that you give for Constable Clayton and the others. So thank you very much. I just wanted to, as a last thing, last commendation comment is tomorrow we finally get the opportunity to Deputy Chief Ferguson and Deputy Chief Burnett to finally swear them in officially as the new deputy chiefs in their respective roles, and they're in those roles for a reason. I got to test drive them, if you will, for a few months, and just got nothing but great things to say about them. They're great. They're great cops. They're passionate, but they're even better people. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
So are you saying, Chief, that as of tomorrow they'll have to really start working?
Yeah, it would appear.
Okay, that's all the business. I would be grateful if you could pass along to the members who are cited today, Deputy Burnett, the board's regards for the work that they're doing. I also want to thank all the members of the public who delegated today, and to everyone attending the meeting. We're certainly grateful for your interest and for comments that you provide. The last thing we do have to do, I was reminded, we have to receive the letters of commendation as the last item. Are they received?
Received.
Okay. Is there any other business? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for your hard work, and good evening.
Yeah.
Good night.